So I do think of the VSBA as functioning in both ways.
All right, so let me go. I'm just going to check the raised hands to see if they're raised for comment or just raised because they were voting for some previous thing. Mark Schauber, is your hand up for comment?
No, I'm still in favor of leading being in there.
Okay, thank you. Floor, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I'm for comment. If you looked at the package, that some of the comments from the local school boards was like the comment about leading. It felt like arrogant, right? Like so I think trusted really speaks to everything that we want to say, because we would have to be the primary and leading to be trusted already. So I just wanted to say that. So leading felt, I guess, arrogant to some of the members. If you read the comments in one of the pages, I can't see it right now because I'm working just from my iPad. So just check those comments, and so that's all. Yeah, trusted also include, you have to get people to understand the change, to trust you in order to create change. So I think trusted says all we need to say. We need less words rather than more words.
Thanks, Floor. Colleen, go ahead.
I'm really in favor of any of them. I do like the focus on leadership, however, and maybe leader is not the word. Maybe it's just primary. Maybe there's a thesaurus search, but I do like the idea of the VSBA taking on leadership. However, rather than simply trusted, to me, trusted is not enough. There's got to be an action related to leadership.
Neil,
Yes.
can I ask a question as from doing the notes here?
Certainly.
Is there a motion on the floor, or is this just a discussion?
No, we're still kind of in a discussion phase. I
Okay.
did a straw poll before to see if I could get to some quick resolution on this, and that
Okay.
kind of just didn't work. So on we go. Dave Sharp, you had your hand up and then it went down. Are you good?
I'm good.
Okay. Mark Schauber, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say at the retreat, we spent a fair amount of time on this, and ultimately, settled on the whatever that first sentence was in what was sent out. I would just hate to see us spend a lot more time on this now with the full agenda for one word.
Thanks. Kim, go ahead.
I also had looked at the comments and sort of took away from us from that a little bit of a caution around sort of our asserting ourselves as leading. But I wonder if we get it in what Colleen just said by saying the VSBA is a trusted leader, is the trusted leadership organization advancing the essential. If we put leadership, if we're really talking about leadership versus leading as opposed to other organizations that do the same work, we are demonstrating leadership in this governance arena. I don't know if that makes it clunkier or makes more sense, or how that resonates with anybody. So it would be, is the trusted leadership organization advancing?
Thanks for that suggestion, Kim. I'm going to go to Colleen. Has her hand up.
Maybe it's just simply the trusted organization or the primary organization for providing leadership, that there's an action there. But
Okay. So it seems to hinge around 3 words this evening, folks. And those 3 words are trusted, leadership, and primary. I'm getting some sense that folks are really not or opposed to trusted. So it kind of narrows down to leadership and or primary. David Chandler, go ahead.
So to not to beat up the whole leadership thing too much. Somebody did say that, how can you be the leader when you're the only one doing it? That was one of the comments as well. But I do like the idea that we are leaders, or we're strategic, or we're time tested, or we're the primary. But I think the real aspirational thing, aspect of this thing is being trusted. Because right now, there are parts of school boards that don't trust us and all the rest. So I do think that we need to stick with trusted, and that is truly an aspiration, and that we become the people that people expect to provide good advice and good training and all the other stuff. So that's my comment.
Thanks, David. Yeah, so I will agree. I don't think that we're seeing too much of a concern over the word trusted in here. I think it's whether and how we incorporate the terms leader or leadership and primary into the vision statement. I do want to just pause for a moment and turn to our board trainer extraordinaire, Phil Gore, to see if he has any words of wisdom as we try to wrestle this one out.
Yeah, Neil, I was working on a draft that might be helpful. Let me just read this to you and see how it sounds. The VSBA is the trusted leadership organization advancing the essential work of school boards so that each and every student is supported in their educational journey. So it would start with the VSBA is the trusted leadership organization. I wonder if that gets at what board members would prefer.
Yeah. So I got one thumbs up from Kim. Maybe I want to go the opposite. Are there thumbs down on that one?
I'll put that in the chat so people can actually see it.
Yeah. So it's still, you know, we are, I know Don was pushing hard for primary, but I also saw Kim Gleason give it a thumbs up, and I know she was pushing for primary as well. So I'm wondering if this is sort of splitting the difference, but is capturing, you know, the vision of the VSBA. And
Neil, I would remove the word primary in favor of what's just been stated.
okay, thank you for that, Don.
Me too. I don't think I ever meant to put primary in, but I didn't love leader, and I really like leadership as Colleen pointed to our responsibility in this arena. So I like that.
Okay.
Can I just say that there's one small difference? I don't know if he meant to put it in or not, but the original language says local school boards, and this one does not. It just says school boards. Is that meant to be there or not on purpose?
I think we leave it out because I don't think that is our only, right? Like school district boards, SUs, and as a matter of fact are our clients, right? Are like bill paying people. Not that all board members aren't, but does local add anything? I don't think it adds anything.
That wasn't intentional on my part.
Okay. Mark Schauber, go ahead.
Didn't realize I was unmuted. I think local is actually important because it's important that part of what the VSBA is doing is advocating for local boards, whether we're talking about SUs or school districts. I don't think it matters. It's the fact that it's our locally elected representatives that are governing our schools. So I do think that local is actually really important to keep in there.
Okay. And Kim, go ahead.
I think it's just a question. So by saying that, are we not meaning broader SD or SU boards? Are we limiting it rather than, like, wouldn't just saying school boards include all versions of school boards? Why is local a qualifier that enhances it? We're not
Mark,
excluding local by not saying local, right? We just may be excluding SU boards by saying local.
Dave Sharp has his hand up. Go ahead, Dave.
So I think it all depends on your view of what the word local means. There are people in my neighborhood that think local means the town. Local really does embrace larger school districts. So it all depends on what your notion of local is.
Thanks, Dave. Mark, go ahead.
To me, local is local, be it town, district, SU versus Montpelier.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to Kim's point, Mark, I don't think that there's an argument that there is no other school board other than a local school board, right? We don't have, in Vermont, we don't have school boards that aren't local.
Currently, we don't have school boards that are local.
Yeah.
But I think so. So
My
by
hand is up.
oh, sorry.
Sorry, Lisa, I didn't see you there. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I think it is the qualifier of what local means. And I think through Act 46, saying that in my community, your local school board is very different living in a merged board. Other than, or in place of a standalone who really has a local school board in their community. So I think it's the qualifier of what that means, what local means. I don't think local needs to be in there. I think it does. It leaves it open. And why do you need to qualify it? Why can't you just say school board?
Thanks. Adrian, go ahead.
Colleen had put in the chat instead saying Vermont school boards. And I thoroughly agree. If we can't decide what local means, why would we have it in there? So I suggest Vermont school boards.
Okay. So if we're going that route, then, and we look at Phil's suggested revision, and we substitute in the word Vermont in front of school boards. Phil, I'm wondering if you'd be willing to make that little typographical change and then drop it in the chat. So instead of school boards, we say Vermont school boards.
Yes, I can do that. And also, Neil, Sandra offered another suggestion in the chat you might not have seen.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
Just moving the word leading to a different position in the statement.
Yep. Okay. So folks, if you take a look at your chat, yeah, so then Sandra's recommendation is the VSBA is the trusted organization leading the essential work of Vermont school boards so that each and every student is supported in their educational journey. And Suzanne thinks it's clunky if we add Vermont. Dave Sharp, go ahead. You guys are blowing my timeline here, by the way. There's no way that we're being done at 7:30 at this pace.
So that's exactly my suggestion, is that we go with Phil's suggested language with the addition of Vermont school boards, and let's get a straw vote on that.
Okay. I wasn't meant to well, I was meant to be a little bit pushy on this because I do think that we can wordsmith this thing probably until 7:30 tonight. I'm not trying to squelch the commentary on this, but I do think that we need to sort of see if we can find something to move forward. With that, I do want to get a show of hands. So let me get a vote. I'm going to move that we approve the vision as Phil has outlined in the chat here, the most recent chat from Phil. I'm going to make that motion that we approve this as the vision statement.
So you're making a motion, Neil?
I am making a motion, and I would need a second for that.
Adrian
I'll
will,
second that.
however,
Okay.
Adrian is a second.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm just
Okay.
going to stop the screen share at this moment, just so that I can see you all a little bit better. Is there discussion on this?
Do you want me to read the final motion?
Sure.
Neil, I did not totally understand Sandra's recommendation. It sounded good, but I didn't follow it to the end. Is that off the table?
It was moving leadership.
It was moving leadership. It is not off the table. If you want to consider it, then we'd have to take the appropriate motion, the appropriate vote on the motion that's been made.
Okay, I'll
think you
read the
need a
motion.
second. You need a second to your motion, Neil.
Oh, I
It
did
was
get a
Adrian.
second from Adrian.
Oh, Adrian. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I missed that.
That's okay.
The motion is the VSBA is a trusted leadership organization advancing the essential work of Vermont school boards so that each and every student is supported in their educational journey.
And Sandra took out leadership and put in leading organization.
Do you want me to read it? Neil?
No, hers was a little bit different. Go ahead and read it, Sandra.
The VSBA is the trusted organization leading the essential work of school boards so that each and every student is supported in their educational journey.
I like that the best of anything we've done.
Okay.
So we have a motion on the table. If we want to consider Don's
Yep.
suggestion, we have to vote down this motion.
That's.
If we like it the way it is, we vote for this motion.
That's what I was just going to say, Dave. So if there isn't, and I saw a bunch of thumbs up, but I think that was for the other. So Kim, quickly, what are you going to say about this one?
I'm sorry, so do we consider ourselves a leadership organization? Or are we leading only on the essential work of school boards? Are there other areas that we're leading, like legislative advocacy and otherwise? By moving leading, are we limiting what we're doing? I'm just asking that question. I don't know that I have the answer. And
I guess
do we
in my-
consider
yeah,
ourselves a
so
leadership
it-
organization?
Right. So I think in my opinion, truly only mine, I think it's a distinction that's not that great to me, right? I think that you can be if we're going to be a leading organization and the name of the organization is the Vermont School Boards Association, we better be doing something for and with school boards, right? And so I understand your point, but to me, the distinction is not a great one. If there isn't any other discussion for the motion on the floor, and I will add, if folks thought that Sandra's recommended language was a little bit better, you should vote down this motion. That being said, all those in favor of the motion that's on the floor right now, please raise your hand. I am seeing 7.
I see 9.
You see 9. I see Tara Sweet clapping her hands, but I wasn't sure if that was a vote. If she was just happy that we're moving off of this item.
Now
You
it's
see 9.
Okay. All those, so let's pull those hands down and then all those opposed. I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. All right, so by my count, folks, the motion passes. So we've got the language that was in the chat as proposed by Phil. Okay. All right. Hey, I know that these things can be tough, especially when we're trying to get the words right, especially when it's the mission and the vision for the organization, because you don't want to screw it up. But I do think that the work that we spent doing this was I mean, we put a lot of effort into this, and I don't want folks maybe in the end to get discouraged if maybe the language wasn't quite right. You know, we can always, you know, if this doesn't work out for us, if we find something that's not right with us, we've got opportunities to fix this going forward. We are not stuck with this until all of us are off this board. So let's give it a go. Let's see how we can make this vision work for us and move forward. We're not done with the wordsmithing yet, I don't think, because we do then want to take care of the mission.
So on the mission, there were some respondents who thought that it was not clear what cultivation of inclusive communities meant. As a reminder, the draft mission statement from the retreat was develop and provide systems and resources for supporting school boards and their members informed through the cultivation of inclusive communities. And there were some comments that said that they didn't understand what cultivation of inclusive communities was meant to be. That those prompted us to develop some alternative language, which we thought captured what the board was looking for at the retreat, but took out the word cultivating. So this is very similar to the original, but it just says develop and provide systems and resources that support school boards and their members informed through inclusive community engagement. And I'd invite Phil or Sandra to add anything if they think I missed anything on that.
Don Collins, your hand was up from before. Do you have a comment, or was that from a vote? Okay, I think you said that was from a vote, but you're on mute too.
Neil, that was up for the vote.
Okay, thanks. Gonna move on to then Dave Sharp.
So moved.
All right, Dave Sharp is moving this as our mission statement. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Jim Salzgiver with the second.
I was going to speak
And-
positively about it. Yeah.
Okay, any discussion? Mark Schauber?
I'll probably be in minority again, but I think these two statements are actually very different. So I'll just leave it at that. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on it, but to me, they're very different.
Okay. Any other comments, discussion on the motion? And once again, we are moving that we adopt the mission, develop and provide systems and resources to support school boards and their members informed through inclusive community engagement. Amy, go ahead.
I think that this revision has a more clear meaning, that there isn't anyone who is saying, well, could you define cultivation for me? Yeah, we don't have to have a glossary of terms for this mission. I think it's pretty clear that we desire to be informed by inclusive community engagement, looking for more inclusion as we work with our communities.
Thank you, Amy. Jim Salzgiver, go ahead.
No, I want to, I think, Mark has a point that they can be read differently. I just think the new language is a lot more accessible. I kind of like the old language, but that's after having been a part of a long discussion over that language. And so having a real clear idea of what that discussion was suggesting, but I can recognize that it's a little bit tough for somebody who hasn't been a part of the discussion to unpack what that really means. I think the new language is a lot more accessible and clear. Cultivation is a really good concept, but it's hard for people to understand in a single sentence statement what it really means. So I think the second one, the new one, does get the concept apart. I think, it's got to be inclusive. It's got to be, we're working at that community engagement, which still kind of like, I think, it takes in that idea of cultivation. So I think it's just easier to understand, and I think that's important.
Thanks, Jim. Kim, go ahead.
Sorry. For me, they feel connected in the what and then the how, because to advance the essential work of local school boards in support of students, we are saying that we are going to develop and provide the systems and resources that those boards need. So that's the how for me. And we're going to do that by engaging with our board members and helping them understand their work as engaging with our communities. So community takes on both meanings for me, but I do see it as the how we get to the what we described in the vision. So I feel a connection to the two for me.
Thank you, Kim. Any other discussion? All right, let me pop out of screen share mode so that I can see hands. Jim, I'm going to ask you to put your hand down. Oop. Nancy, are you got a comment, or are you getting just anxious to vote? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, and please raise your Zoom hand.
Oops. No.
And Don Collins, was your hand up before or not? Okay. I got 15, 10, 13, 14.
Did Don just raise his actual hand, not his Zoom hand? Then we would have 14, yes.
Correct, yes. Okay. If I can get y'all to put those hands down, and then all opposed.
Okay, Michelle Dupree called. She's going to be going to the meeting early to meet with you with a bunch of financial information. Can we do that or shortly thereafter?
Okay.
She probably
Count
will.
one, so motion passes.
They've got some data. I
So
don't know.
congratulations, board.
But,
We have a vision and a mission through much hard work. Thank you so much.
Okay, huh?
And so the good news is that portion of our meeting is behind us. I am going to move on then to our flip around. So item number 3 now is to welcome Addie Lenzner to the meeting this evening. And I don't know, Sue, did you want to do an introduction, or?
Sandra is going to do the introduction.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Everyone, please welcome me. Please join me in welcoming Addie Lenzner, who's VSBA's equity intern and has been working closely with me since middle of June on projects related to educational equity. In addition to the presentation that you're about to hear from Addie, Addie has been attending the Social Equity Caucus meetings on behalf of the VSBA this summer. She's been writing an article for VSBA's fall newsletter. She's developed a survey to collect information for new VSBA equity tools, which are coming very soon, and much more. And while her internship will conclude in just a couple of weeks, I know that we will all see and hear from Addie again in the future. She is a staunch advocate for equity and eagerly volunteers to engage in this work in a variety of ways, most recently joining the membership of the Act One working group. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Addie Lenzner.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you all so much for having me here. I'm really excited to be here with you all. Is there a way I can share my screen? It says it's disabled.
We need to make you a co-host.
Just 1 second.
It was awesome to sit in and hear the mission and vision statement and hear kind of a bit about the work you do. There we go. Okay. So. Okay, so thank you again so much for being here and having me here. My name is Addie Lunsner. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the summer intern for the Vermont School Boards Association. I recently graduated from Arlington Memorial High School, and I'm attending Middlebury College in the fall. I founded the Vermont Student Anti-Racism Network and the End Homelessness Vermont Coalition. Education, equity, and social justice are some of my deep passions. So I'm really grateful to Sandra and Sue for having me this summer. And I'm really excited to share some of the learning that I've done with you all today. So my internship was surrounding education equity. So equity is where I'm going to start. And I'm sure most of you have seen this picture before. It's pretty widespread, but I think it defines equity in a really good way. So equality is when all students receive the same thing. So everyone has the same wooden crate. Whereas equity is when all students receive what they need to succeed. So in this picture, you can see how a level playing field is nice in theory, but it doesn't provide what each person needs. Equity in real life is a lot more complex and messier than this image. But I think this image depicts it well. So for example, an example of equity in real life could be students who experience childhood trauma or poverty or racism or ableism and so many more inequities. All these students have individual needs in order for them to reach their fullest potential. So here are a few examples that I came up with that kind of demonstrate equity in schools. So the first one, a student experiences childhood trauma, which negatively affects their ability to learn. The education team collaborates to gather more information and to learn more about the student's individual needs, then provides resources to support the child and family, which facilitates the student's ability to learn at school. The board considers a request from the administrative team to adjust the budget to reflect additional professional development on childhood trauma and additional support for homeschool coordination. So in this example, the board was able to make changes in the budget to better support students, while the educational team provided resources directly to the child and family. And then here's a second example. The administrative team reviews discipline data and determines that students of color and students with disabilities were suspended at a higher rate of frequency for minor infractions than their peers who are white and do not have disabilities. The administrative team suspects that bias may be a factor and arranges for school staff to undertake bias training, while also analyzing the procedures that address student conduct and discipline. The board reviews the data and considers whether their policy on student discipline could be contributing to the issue. So in this example, the administrative team identified a problem and the board responded accordingly. In both examples, direct action was necessary from the staff and the board. So this kind of shows how equity doesn't just happen out of the blue, but it requires direct intervention and collaborative effort. So I want to hear from all of you now, or at least maybe one or two of you. What is an example of your board's work to address inequity, or what is something that you hope to do in the future? And if maybe one or two people want to speak up and share, that would be amazing.
Go ahead, team. Here's your moment. Adrian, go ahead.
Hi, I mean, we've been having this conversation many times, and one of the things that we've addressed is the fact that any kind of suspensions should be avoided, and we've made many efforts to not suspend students. And then we have also made efforts to, if a child is suspended, that it is used as a positive in that child's education, that they do not, well, at least we're making the effort, that we have the child at the school, that we use that as remedial time, that they are allowed, encouraged to make connections with the people that are staffing any kind of remedial services for them during the period of time that they are 100% in a suspension type situation, so that it's not a negative, it's a catch up. And hopefully that will all work out and we will see positive results.
Awesome.
Thank you. Amy, go ahead.
My district has been in the process of creating an equity policy, and we have that policy, and we are in the beginning stages of an equity audit of the entire supervisory union. And we are also in the early stages of hiring an equity coordinator for the supervisory union.
And Kim, go ahead.
Essex Westford had gone through the work it sounds like Amy is describing now. So we were able to have implemented, not this past June, the June before, an equity policy that was the result of 9 months of work and deep engagement with our communities, particularly those who aren't often at the table for those conversations. And that work in that process also included looking at all of our data through disaggregation and an equity lens, and seeing those inequities allowed a board and others not to unsee them. And that is really compelling in the work and what must come. And it, regularly looking at data in disaggregated ways tells stories that are different than maybe what we understood. So that required some courage on the administration's part and some courage and clarity on what should be expected by the board. And I think establishing all of that in policy gives you some sustainability beyond the bodies or people seated at a board table. And that is really important for administration to know how to direct their work.
Yeah.
And we're fortunate to have our co-director of special ed also be our equity director. And she has been amazing in supporting and leading this work with our superintendent.
We'll do one more with Jim.
Okay, I just thought I'd toss in because, one, Addie is a local for us here since we're Bennington Rutland Supervisory Union and Addie's just down the road. But also because, Amy was talking about starting the equity audit and Kim having done it. We had a school board meeting last night where we heard a lot of the major results from an equity audit that we've just completed. And so I thought it might just be interesting to note. So we're actually just in the process of determining what steps we have to take to deal with it. But I can tell you for anybody who hasn't, has gone through it, hasn't gone through it, it's extremely eye-opening when you get the results of an equity audit and start to, we're all very interested in how we're doing in getting our kids ready for life. And it highlights where you're not accomplishing quite what you might have been hoping to. So I just thought I'd throw it in that, it was a real eye opener to our full board last night, hearing some of the initial results, and we will be working on trying to figure out the next steps to take to try to address that and improve. But, as school board members, you often start to think, you're doing a pretty good job. And I think your school districts probably are doing a pretty good job. But, you've also got to see where you're falling down from time to time. And the equity audit was definitely an eye opener.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear that you did that, to hear from all of you what you're doing. And I mean, doing this work is so eye-opening. Like throughout this whole experience of the internship, I've been looking at data, and I'm going to share some of that with you in a minute, but it's just very enlightening to hear about just all of the details of what's going on in our schools. So thank you all for sharing. Really appreciate it. So I'm going to move on to some statistics that I found for the state as a whole. So during my time with the VSBA, I've specifically researched diverse representation and equal access in gifted programs, as well as equity among dropout rates. So I'm going to start with some data around dropout rates. So what I found was that there was a correlation between free and reduced lunch rates at schools and dropout rates. So schools with higher dropout rates also tended to have higher rates of students on free and reduced lunch. So for example, school district 1 had a 30% dropout rate and a 45% free and reduced lunch rate. So you can see how there's a disparity there. And school district 5 had a 12% dropout rate and a 28% free and reduced lunch rate. So on the next slide is a graph that kind of depicts this, how it goes kind of up in a linear rate. So that was really, really eye-opening for me to see this. And so I looked into this data and also into statistics on AP classes. So which students are taking AP classes, who has access to it, and AP is advanced placement classes. So in the 5 schools that I picked out, there was a much smaller percentage of BIPOC students, so Black, Indigenous, students of color in AP classes. And while it's true that Vermont's racial and ethnic diversity is low overall, I looked a little bit deeper and found statistics for general classes. And in one example of school that I give here, there were a lot of BIPOC students in general classes. At a school, so I'll go to the next slide. At a school on this slide, there were 42 Black students in general algebra, 13 Black students in US history, 33 Black students in general English, and you can see that on the graph on the right. And then on the left is the diversity in AP classes. So you can see how there are a lot of white students in those classes, but Black students, there's only 1 or 2 or none in those AP classes. So that was also really enlightening for me to see. I also found it interesting that the most diverse school district in the state does not offer AP courses. So I found this just really interesting to look at. And I also looked at discipline data across the state. And I found that in Vermont, Black girls are 5 times more likely to be arrested in school than white girls, and students with disabilities are 2 times more likely to be referred to law enforcement than students without disability. So this goes for schools around the state. I think something that I've kind of heard a lot is that Vermont is so progressive and we don't really have these problems, but that's not what the data tells us. So we do have the same problems as other states, and we need to work just as hard to address them. And it's great to hear that you all are already so committed to addressing them. It's really exciting to hear. So after I looked at all this data, I felt this huge weight on me, and I was like, okay, well, what can we do about this? And so what I did was I researched equity policies in other states, and I worked with Sandra and came up with a list of policy suggestions that boards can adopt to directly intervene in the problems I described in the past slides. So first, you can ask your administrative team to collect and analyze data on racial and socioeconomic and disability demographics on topics such as high school completion, leadership, and gifted programs, as well as suspensions and expulsions. After that data has been collected, you can support the necessary solutions. Another important step is bias training for all board members and school staff. So as part of my internship, I took the Kerwin Institute anti-bias course. I went into it and I was like not completely sure if it was going to be something that was necessary, but by the time I was done, I was so much more enlightened on my own biases and just blown away about how much I had learned. So I really recommend anti-bias training for school staff and for board members too. Another program that the board can affect is a high school completion plan. A high school diploma is the key to success in life, as you all know doing this work. Dropping out has been correlated with mental health conditions, substance use, poverty, and criminal behavior. And oftentimes things like pregnancy, poverty, or just lack of interest push students away from education and closer to dropping out. But sometimes all a student needs is a little extra support to make it to graduation. So you as board members have the ability to affect implementation of policy that addresses this by ensuring that resources are available for counseling and support to students, and by adopting policies to help students at most risk of dropping out, which oftentimes are students of color, students with disabilities, and low-income students. So another thing the board should do is ensure full implementation of Act 77, which is personalized learning plans and individualized programs. So this is really important to me personally. Over the pandemic, I became really invested in social justice. So I started working with organizations and volunteering and doing internships. Consequently, this means I had a hard time balancing that with schoolwork. And so during my senior year, my English teacher worked with me to develop my own curriculum and my own English course with her that was surrounding social justice and specifically criminal justice reform, which is something I'm really interested in. So some students don't have this individualized opportunity and they end up dropping out, even though they have a passion for learning. It's just maybe not the traditional learning that we do in schools. So I urge you to use your power as board members to advocate for personalized learning plans and individualized education. Another change the board could make is to seek more representatives of color. This is so important because having an anti-racist society starts with exposure to diversity, especially in a non-diverse state like Vermont. So we need to ensure that BIPOC Vermonters are represented and given a seat at the table in the school board and other school roles in order to foster a society that is inclusive to all. Lastly, I know this has been a lot, the board should ensure mental health support for students. Did you know that 1 in 4 people suffers from a mental disorder and that mental illness often starts before age 18? Students can't participate at their fullest potential in school without mental health support to aid not just with disorders, but with everyday life. Mental health was a barrier to learning before the pandemic, and now support is essential. So before we end our time together, I want to, make this interactive as possible. Can you all take a moment to write down one action you can take back to your board to address educational equity? So I know you all are already doing this work and super invested in it. So if there's anything that maybe sparked your interest in this presentation or anything that you want to kind of go back with your board and talk about more, I'd love if you could take a minute to just think of that or write it down. And then in a minute, I'll ask for a couple of volunteers to share about how their position as school board member enables them to take action towards change. So I'll give you a minute to think about it. And then I'd love some more volunteers to speak up and share. And feel free to just raise your hand when you're ready, but no rush.
Addie, I'm going to let you run the show from here.
Okay, Flor, go ahead.
Thank you, Addie. This was a great presentation, and you reminded me of a couple of things that a lot of the time we put a lot in our work agenda and then forget to sort of go back and really collect the data. So I think from what you were saying, it reminded me to see where are we with diversifying educator workforce. We have made some adjustments in our hiring practices and put resources in HR, but we haven't really monitored how that is going. And the last one is we are doing a dive into collecting data too. So how are we doing and implementing fully individualized education plans, just getting some real data. So thank you for inspiring that, and have something to share. Just that we have an equity scholar too, but we have an independent equity scholar. And I always try to tell other boards the power of having somebody that can really talk to power by not being completely hired by the school, but being independent, because then it's really shown us where the inequities are for our kids. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Dawn.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I'm going to focus on some work that we have done and should have done regarding high school completion. 2 years ago, some of us convinced the board to put in money to add a staff member working with administration, guidance, and parents, et cetera. It was just short of a disaster with COVID and we hired a person who was competent, but was not a good match for what we wanted done. So we've now hired a new person, and I'm going to take back to the board that we need to be asking for regular reports through the administration and monitoring what's happening, because we kind of hired somebody and left it alone and found out that the administration did not, in my opinion, follow it that closely. There were a number of people who were supposed to be on top of it. COVID took away. And so by your sharing today, I'm going back to the board and tell them through VSBA and an intern, we need to take and be responsible school board members and mentor this very important aspect of our young people's education to complete their high school diploma. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really important to me too. So thank you so much for sharing that and for being invested in that work. Is there anyone else who wants to share before we move to the next slide? Okay. Well, it was great to hear a little bit from all of you. Thank you so much. So this is kind of the end of my presentation, but before I go, I want to mention that I'm part of an organization called the Vermont Student Anti-Racism Network, and we are hosting an event on September 30th. It's at the State House, and it's called Vasarn's Day of Racial Equity. So we're bringing together students from around the state who are interested in promoting racial equity to listen to speakers and attend workshops and visit tabling organizations and also enjoy some music and food. So I would like to invite all of you to attend as participants and also bring the invitation back to your school board and other students. And also, if any of you are interested in tabling or speaking, we'd love to have you join for that too. So if you're interested, just send me an email and I'd love to chat with you about that. And thank you again so much for this space. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Addie.
Thank you. That was amazing. And thank you for the work that you've done with us and for us over the summer. It was greatly appreciated. I hope you enjoyed your time.
I did. It was really great.
Good. Any other questions though for Addie or anything else that the VSBA staff wanted to add? Kim, go ahead.
I know Addie's work in building the Students Against Racism, and I know this idea of connecting our students through a network is so important to elevate student voice. And I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts or ideas as you're heading on to college on how we make sure that's sustainable. Is there anything that VSBA or other organizations might do to support continuing the network of students, particularly on this topic, but even more broadly? Do you see anything obvious that we're missing that would connect student voice to elevate and empower?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's just important for like these organizations to be like uplifting what students are doing. And so I know there are a lot of like student-run organizations, even like within schools, that are doing amazing equity work and anti-racism work, and just like uplifting what they're doing. And even expanding that to other schools, I think is really important. I know like when I was starting Vasarn with some other students, we relied a lot on the VPA and some other organizations to like share our flyers and promote what we were doing. And so that sort of support is really important. So I think just like, making yourself visible so that students know that you as resources are out there and that we can kind of lean on you to, share our flyers and share about events and things like that, I think is the most important thing.
Any other questions? All right, not seeing any more at the moment. Addie, thank you so much. Really appreciate you spending the time with us tonight. You are welcome to stick around if you want, but I also know that you are equally welcome to head on out.
Thanks, Addie.
So with that, we are going to move on then to our report from the Resolutions Committee. And with that, I believe I'm going to turn it over to Floor.
Hi, everybody.
It's nice to see everybody. I'm gonna try to keep it short and sweet. I'm gonna start quickly by thanking the resolutions committee. You see the names of everybody that participated in your page 1 of the resolutions report. And we had just one meeting and one online meeting. We didn't have as many resolutions this year. So it was really quick and well done. I'm opening, bear with me here because I'm working from my iPad today and I'm opening my other documents. So I have it right in front of me. A quick reminder, most of you know what resolutions are, which is for the recording, as you know, our positions taken by the association on issues to importance of the school boards. And they include recommendations from the VSBA, local school boards, and what we did, the charge for our committee really was to review the new resolutions, to review the regular resolutions, which is what you see. And there's a little bit of a proposal from the committee. And we'll also, the last step is going to be to accept it. We did a little cleanup in our resolutions document, but I'm going to move right into resolution number 1 from Mississauga Valley District that was withdrawn, but I'm going to let Dawn speak to this one. Don, are you there?
Yes. Now, we had 2, and I think you are talking about the one regarding technical education?
Yes.
Yes. In the end result of our work on this proposal, we tried to merge information from a prior approved resolution regarding the importance of looking at funding and structure of governance for career and technical education. Some of the things that my district, and I was very pleased that they've come from wanting to get out of VSBA 3 years ago to now wanting to participate with a resolution. But one of the things that was really important was that we look at what the governor and legislature did almost, well, I'd say after we were working and probably submitting a resolution. So I guess what we tried to do is take some of the changes that the legislature made after we drafted this with putting money into job training, look at what a prior resolution was, make the modifications and keeping to our core direction when we submitted this. So I think in the end, a small subcommittee came up with a draft that, according to the information I had from Sandra, was approved by our whole resolutions committee. So that's about all I have to say, but I would hope it would be supported because I think it's a continuous effort to make certain that we look at career and technical education as an important part of secondary school education.
Thank you, Don. Does everybody have the be it resolved language in front of you? Yes, I can't quite hear. Can you hear me okay? So I'm looking for, oops, there. Thank you, Sandra. So you can see it there, the General Assembly should provide an additional mechanism in both 16 VSA 492, 706Q, and 24 VSA Section 832, that the school district or other municipalities may choose to provide suitable crime insurance cover. Sorry, I'm in there. Sorry, sorry guys, I'm in the wrong. The General Assembly should require the agency of education to identify the proposed new models of funding and governance structures to improve the quality and duration and access to career and technical education. So that was, as we said, it was the amendment is on that page. So our job today is just the recommendation from the committee was to pass, and we decided to withdraw this resolution. I can't see anybody. Can you hear me okay?
I don't know if it's helpful, but it's on page 10, the language that Flor just read. I'm not sure who's screen sharing.
Oh, I am. Am I on the wrong screen?
No, you are right there. You're right there. Yeah.
So is it okay to clarify, Flor?
Yes, because we would,
Okay.
yeah, go ahead.
So the proposal that is showing right now on Neil's screen was withdrawn. And then Neil, if you scroll down to page 10 of
Yeah.
the committee report, you'll see a proposed amendment to a current resolution. Right there. See the underlined language under 1O.
So this part right here.
That part, yeah.
So the strike through language would be removed and the
Cool.
underlined language would be new.
And we'll do that. So I'm just trying to go in order, but I don't need a motion for this one right now. We're gonna do all of this as a slate, unless Neil, you think that this one should be different. Yeah, that last part, I'm gonna do it as a slate. That was my hope, the whole table.
Yeah, so the items that you have in the table here, you just wanted to treat it as a slate, which would
Yeah.
include a proposed change in the language for 1O, striking what you
Exactly.
see here and adding in what you see here. I think as long as board members understand that that's what's included in the slate, I think we're okay.
So could I have a motion for that, or do you want to call the motions, Neil?
Nope, if you want to handle that right now, so are you looking for a motion to adopt the full slate here? So
So since we already discussed the governance, I was a little disorganized going back and forth in my documents. So yeah, I'm looking for a motion to accept, if everybody had a chance to review the table, to accept the recommendations of the committee as you see them in this table. And basically it was just a review of our continuing resolutions and a little bit that we deleted, and you can see it there.
So move.
Second.
Thank you, Nancy. And second, I couldn't hear, but Carrie, did you hear who was second?
It was Suzanne.
Oh, thank you, Suzanne. Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye
Aye.
or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Neil, I think we have mostly ayes. Yep, oh, ayes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 11. I'm counting 12. How many do you have? Okay, any opposed?
I see 8.
Oh, I had my hand up. I do have my hand up too.
Are they all electronic or are they both?
There were both. So would everybody do electronic?
There.
So we didn't have an opportunity to discuss. I was waiting for that opportunity. I have a question, and that is, we're doing the entire slate, so that includes the public funds accountability resolution?
No, I'm sorry, David, for the confusion. It's like I was gonna do the table last. The table is just
Right.
a review of our resolutions. That table that you had at the end is not any new or proposed resolutions. It's just looking through the document. It's just Don's proposal was already kind of within a resolution that we had. So that's the only one that I really wanted to discuss. The other one was pretty much, we were looking at a resolutions document to clean it up. And then we're gonna be discussing the other resolutions that you see there. So you will have a chance to talk about public funds and all of that. Is that okay? Okay, so.
And just
with
to
that-
clarify, I am sorry that I don't remember, but continuing means we re-vote to continue them each year. And regular resolution means it goes on the books and doesn't get reviewed until it needs to be reviewed. Is that right? Or did I get that backwards?
Backwards.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Sorry.
a regular, so yeah, so a regular resolution, we review it every year, or we might amend that, or just, it might just die because it's time
It was done.
has passed and it was not needed. Continuing resolution, we keep it in our book forever, or until we notice that something might need to change. But we are now in for the past 2 years, we have been reviewing them every single year. So we will look at them again, even if they're continuing.
Thank you.
Okay. So with that clarification, I see everybody's hand now up. let's see, and Colleen has his hand up to, okay,
15 hands are up.
15. So 15, yeah, thank you, Sue. Now let's move to number 2. So if you're on page 2, then,
So it's
Is that
appropriate
about-
to ask for anybody who's against it.
oh, sorry, David. Yes, anybody opposed? Raise your hand, please, even if I can't see everybody now that we have. Can you speak up if there's somebody opposed?
There are 2.
Okay, oh, I need to
Dawn-
lower my.
Dawn, I see your
Donna, are
hand
you
up.
opposed? I don't
No,
think
I
you're
got my
opposed.
hand- I didn't lower my hand from the front.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think, anybody opposed? I saw that everybody voted. Sorry, David, that's why I didn't ask, but
Zero.
sorry. Okay, 0. Okay, so let's go back. So we're on page 4 in the part, be it resolved. And Sandra, can you remind me who is going to speak to this one besides us?
This was also submitted by the
see.
Missisquoi Valley School District,
Yeah.
so Dawn could
Dawn?
explain why
Okay.
it was withdrawn.
Okay. Yeah, done.
We decided to withdraw that. Our business manager, who was very involved, she's one of the officers of the association, had brought this to us early on. The committee, we had a committee, a goals committee board that brought it to the board. And then there was legislative action near the end of the session. I talked briefly with Sue, and I'm trying to think of someone else, but anyway, and I went back to the board and I told them that based on that, I felt we should withdraw it and see if what the legislature did this year is effective in bringing about the changes that school boards desired.
Thank you, Don. So with that, we can, any questions from other board members on that? Otherwise,
I
we
would
can
imagine
move.
most business managers should have has shared that with the local boards.
Yeah. So then I'm going to move to Burlington District to the next resolution, page 5. And that is an amendment on a current resolution. And you can read it. Can everybody see that? Okay. So I'll be looking for a motion. The recommendation of the resolutions committee was to pass. And you can see there is a regular resolution too. So could I have a motion and then we'll discuss?
I'll move
Thank you, Kim.
resolution proposal number 5.
Okay.
Adrian will second.
Thank you, Adrian. And
For the, sorry, to clarify
Mark?
for the notes, this is proposal number 3 on page 5.
yes,
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Okay. The
Yeah.
wrong Burlington one. Sorry about that.
yeah, Burlington is the, yeah. And then Martine is not here with us. Mark, you're with us. So if you wanted to comment, so is there any discussion? Otherwise we could vote. I can't see everybody's hand, so please speak up if you have if you want to discuss.
I think it's pretty important, in my opinion. Act 173 created 2 categories of independent schools, those approved and those approved for receipt of public tuition. And in doing so, I think
Kim, I think you might be
Kim,
talking.
you're in the wrong one.
resolution.
Yeah.
I'm public funds accountability. Okay, I'm sorry.
I think the confusion
I
is
keep missing
because
I'm
Mark,
so sorry.
sorry, Mark will speak if so desired. Mark could speak to the accountability resolution, but we were
Yes.
still finishing up with resolution proposal
Number 3.
number 3.
I kept sliding
Sorry.
up and didn't get there
Yeah.
far enough.
Yeah.
Mute me. I'm done.
Yeah, no, sorry, I mentioned Mark, but Mark is in the other one, but Martine is not here with us. And as you know, they don't have the high school and it just came from them too, but this is helpful for everybody. So all those in favor, please signify
Yeah, so
by,
Yeah, I'm just, Flora, just one bit of clarification. So really the motion that we have on the table is that for the VSBA board to recommend passage of this resolution as
Yeah,
a
to
regular resolution.
Yes.
Number 3.
Correct.
And yeah, what you see in page
Number
5.
3.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
which-
I
which is
apologize for
highlighted.
mangling that.
What is
Yeah.
highlighted there. Yeah.
I'll stop sharing so you can see everyone.
Okay, yeah. So all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Electronic hand would be helpful. $14 and myself 15. So I see 15 if I count myself is Sue. And any opposed? Lower your hands, please. Kim, your hand is up, but you're lowering it. Yeah, okay. So I don't see anybody opposed, so the motion carries. Okay, now we're in the public funds accountability. And it's Claire is not with us today, right? So I don't see Claire Will or Martine. So we're gonna look at the be it resolved. You see it there. And the committee recommendation was again to pass as a continuing resolution.
I move.
Thank you, Kim.
You're welcome. Public Funds Accountability Resolution Proposal number 4.
Adrian.
Second it,
This
or
is Amy.
give it to Adrian.
Second.
Adrian, oh, okay.
And just one minor bit of clarification, we're moving that the
Amy.
VSBA recommend passage of this resolution.
Yes.
Yes, as a continuing resolution.
As a resolution, yeah.
Correct.
And I reminded to the board that whether we approve it or not, this goes to the entire, at our annual meeting, they would be looking at them regardless of our decision. So we have a motion on the table, moved by Kim, second by Amy or Adrian. I'm gonna give it to Amy, Adrian, because you did the other one, is that okay?
I'm,
Amy's there. Okay,
I have it as Amy.
okay, that's good. All right. So all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand.
Flora, I think you've got
Second.
David Chandler, though, might have had a
Okay,
comment or
David, go ahead.
discussion.
Yeah,
So you can hear me, right? Yeah. So
yes.
you all may still decide that you think that this is a resolution that we should put before the whole group, but it's based on faulty logic. It's actually incorrect. So if you look at the last 3 whereases, the third from the bottom says, in non-operating districts or those that tuition certain grades, parents and guardians may choose to send their children to any public school in Vermont or to any school approved by the Board of Education to receive public funds. So the funds, the only schools that are using, the only districts that are using public funds and spending them on independent schools are those few that either are non-operating or are tuitioning certain grades. So the next one says diverting public school tax dollars to private and independent schools creates a circular problem. Well, it's not, it's only those schools, it's only those districts that don't have the schools that are spending public dollars. So that argument about diverting public tax dollars to private and independent schools doesn't really apply. And then the last one, the continued draining of public funds, is basically building on the faulty logic. So I think what's happening is that a lot of schools are finding that the parents and children, the parents of children who aren't happy with their school are pulling their kids and sending them to independent schools. But these people have resources, so they're paying for it out of their own pockets. So this won't solve your problem. The money the money that people are spending for independent schools is mostly coming out of people's pockets. So you have a solution for the wrong problem.
Thank you, David. And I think this is, and I'm sorry that I was rushing everybody because this is something that I'm actually really passionate about, but because I was the chair, I should be, not speak as much to it, but the rationale was very clear from the board members. And I think an example, it's better maybe to give you an example. So an example for me would be like, I participate in the Education Quality Standards Act 1 group right now, right? And we are changing some of that includes all the conversations that we've been having today about equity, what our intern was just pointing out to us. So that applies to public schools, but not to private or independent, So if you look at this resolution, I think we should concentrate just in the be it resolved language, which is what will be in our resolutions. None of the where ours are going to be in there. But also we should, I don't know, we need to treat the schools that use public dollars, regardless if you're independent or public. And I think that your schools have nothing to fear, right? Because you guys are treating all students the same. You're not discriminating, so I don't think that this should be something that is against independent schools. It's mostly an accountability and the way that we report and being good stewards of the money, the very limited money that we have for public education, as public education is a human right. But that's just me. So I don't know if others would like to talk about it. And again, please speak up because I can't see everybody while we have sharing the screen.
I can help, Flora, because I can go. I see the list of folks that have had
Okay,
their
thank
hands
you.
up. So I'm going to go to Suzanne first.
Thanks.
Sorry, my hand, I forgot to lower it from the last vote. Sorry.
That's okay. Jim Salzgiver.
Okay. Yeah, I have a very different different take on this, and it's it kind of fits in with David's, but during the resolution committee meetings as well, I raised the fact that we do currently have a resolution that addresses this issue. It's 2L, independent school, pre-kindergarten, and after school funding. That's a resolution updated in 2021. It was in place prior to that. And it basically, followed, I was very involved, as was David, in discussions as this evolved over time to be a resolution that intended, I thought, to be a more nuanced and logical approach to defining what those requirements should be on independent schools. And Flora just talked about discrimination, etc. That is in 2L. I mean, 2L that we have had as a resolution in place, and it has been directing our work for years. It to me is a more logical and thoughtful approach to defining what are the important elements of rules, regulations, policies, etc., that we should ensure that any independent school needs to follow in order to operate. My view is this new resolution, full, attempt at defining what are the important elements that those independent schools should follow. The new resolution is a everything in the kitchen sink approach. Just it's basically it takes away the thoughtfulness of the prior one and just says you need to do everything and follow every law, every regulation, every policy, every procedure, everything that public schools have to do. Which I can understand. Those of us involved with public schools, they get the old sense of fairness, but I think it's to me it is very much overboard. It's essentially trying to take let's get these guys, and that importantly, a lot of you guys don't think it's important, but importantly, that is the message we are sending to the independent schools, including the ones like in my area, they're very important parts of our educational system. We're sending them the message that the VSBA says that we should really come down on you guys. I think it is a, you know, to me, David and I have had, you know, we have discussions with our independent schools locally, and we know that, you know, their response to this sort of, you know, this sort of, you know, everything in the kitchen sink approach is, you know, it creates a lot of defensiveness and creates a lot of difficulty in trying to work together as a, you know, work together as partners in education. So I definitely, you know, have issues with this one, and I think we're throwing out a thoughtfully crafted resolution for one that is just, you know, we had a surgical approach and now we're taking a sledgehammer approach.
Thank you, Jim. Mark Schauber, go ahead.
So I don't have 2L in front of me, but I don't think a nuanced approach is appropriate. Public tax dollar money is going to pay for these private independent schools. They should follow the same rules and regulations. If we have an issue with those rules and regulations that public schools have to follow, then we should be addressing that, but not addressing it in such a way that we are separating out the rules that independent private schools that receive public funds have to follow. Full disclosure, I am the author of this resolution, just to let everybody does know. My district is a secondary tuitioning district, and my board was split 50-50 on this. We have a 6-member board. Burlington was happy to take this on because of their belief in the requirement, or that there should be accountability. I don't see this as coming down on independent and private schools. They should be under the same rules and regulations. The fact that they don't want to, the fact that they feel that it is not their responsibility to be as accountable as public schools are, is a different issue. But sorry, Jim, I disagree with you. They should be putting in the same effort that public schools are, because they're getting public school dollars. And to go back to what David said in regards to, I think it was the second to last whereas statement. I'm not sure I completely followed it, but public school dollars are being, for non-operational schools and for tuitioning districts, are being paid to private and independent schools. One, the schools paying the tuition have no say in the education of their students. Kind of a separate issue though. But the funds are not going to other public schools where they would be reinvested into the public school system. And I don't have the research in front of me, but it's approximately 2 to 1. $2 for every dollar that is spent in public schools, you're getting about $2 of investment out of it. So you're taking that money out of the public school system. And by taking that money out of the public school system, you are depriving future students of improvements in their schools so that they could compete with the independent schools. I'm sure I've got plenty more to say on this, but I'll leave it at that for now.
All right, thank you, Mark. Dave Sharp, go ahead.
I agree completely with what Mark just put forward. I worked on this when I was in the legislature. So the plain fact of the matter is many independent schools simply do not want to have to adhere to the same rules and regulations that public schools have to adhere to. And I would ask what regulations do you think are inappropriate, that we should relieve public schools from having to follow? And that's a valid question. And I think we're going into an era here, given what the Supreme Court has ruled recently, where finding public dollars to educate our students in public schools is going to become more and more difficult. The divide between, the independent school people are love to say, the level playing field, we'll compete on a level playing field, and public schools ought to compete on a level playing field. Well, the playing field simply is not level and ought to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Colleen, go ahead.
Yes, full disclosure, on the committee, I actually voted against this particular amendment, and thank you to David and Jim for reminding me of what I found objectionable, and that is for me, what's particularly problematic is the second to last clause, the whereas clause, the diverting public school tax dollars to private and independent schools creates circular problems. What I object to is the qualification, the determination of the quality of education, that there's a reduction in quality of education that causes more students to choose, and that it has an effect on the quality of education for those public schools that are left with less money. While we might be able to find some research related to that, I thought that was just taking it a bit too far. We don't know the quality of the independent schools, and I just felt that this particular clause was unnecessary and divisive. And as Jim had noted, we do have section 2L that has, the statement public dollars that support private independent schools should carry with them the same obligations related to accountability. So I could support this, get behind this, but I find the language offensive and unnecessarily divisive for those who take great pride in their private schools.
Thank you, Colleen. Kim, go ahead.
I don't think I read that in the same way, Colleen, but I certainly appreciate your thoughts on it. I do think that when tuition occurs at the secondary levels, I think what I understand in the broader statewide arena is that you are left paying that tuition, and what's left for those elementary grades could very much so compromise the quality of delivery. And I think that's important. The other piece of this that I think is pretty important is the deference and reference to Public Accommodations Act. And the Public Accommodations Act, for those not as familiar, defines a place of public accommodation to mean any school, restaurant, store, establishment, or other facility at which services, facilities, goods, privileges, advantages, benefits, or accommodations are offered to the general public. If that is not independent schools, then if they are not offered to the general public, and there is something about their admission that makes it unavailable to the general public, then it should be unavailable to public funds. I think that we have finite resources, and I think the recent Supreme Court decision is going to, this resolution goes a little bit further to be clear on what reference to law and non-discriminatory practice by virtue of public accommodations is protected, so that there are ways to advocate for clarity on meeting the same standards if you're getting the same dollars. And we are a statewide funded system. So I don't find a problem with the way they've characterized the payment of public funds to these schools. That is in fact what happens in our statewide funding system. And I know Dave Sharp did a much better job articulating that than I, and I was waiting to hear because I knew he knew best. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Kim. I see Jim's hand up, but I just wanted to see if there was anybody else that hasn't spoken on this already that wanted to say something before I go back to Jim. All right, I'm not seeing anything, so go ahead, Jim.
Okay, I'll try to be quick. Fundamentally, I think Dave Sharp did bring up a good point that, what are the elements that are really not necessary for us to require independent schools to follow. They are a different model, and so they operate a bit differently. And they have things like, people talk about, it's not necessarily a requirement that all of their teachers be licensed. And people get freaked out about that issue. I look at, a school like, again, we have locally an example of a school that actually, we've got real questions. If you require everything of them, can they continue to, it's a good school. It's considered one of the best high schools in the state. We pay them more than the statewide average, but they spend more on every one of our kids than we pay them, because they have the ability to raise additional funds. They do meet all the requirements that are set out in our 2L right now, and they meet some other requirements. We can get into a debate. I think Dave. The thing I liked about Dave Sharp's point was, okay, what are the items that it might not be necessary to require them to follow? That would be a thoughtful approach that could be taken to amending 2L to say, okay, are there other things that should be included, instead of doing they have to look like a public school. If they look like a public school, I've got concerns about their ability to continue to provide the quality of education that they do to our kids currently. And there are various schools doing this. Not all, independent schools run the gamut. There are some that are probably not overly positive for our educational system. There are some that I view as extremely positive for our educational system. And I think that it just it makes sense to have a somewhat more nuanced view of how they can fit into our system and what we should require of them. And I find it bothersome that we're just not interested in having that detailed of a discussion. But so be it.
Thanks. I'm going to go to Gaston just because he hasn't had a chance to speak on this yet, and then we'll maybe finish up with Mark.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks. For me, what this all boils down to is this whole notion of admission criteria. And I think that when you start looking at independent and private schools, one of the reasons why they quote unquote give such quality education is that they're admitting only certain types of students, therefore leaving a population of students with higher need in the public school system. And to me, that's a problem. And so I'm in favor of the way this is written. And my daughter teaches at a parochial school. But, for me, it's all about equity. And if we believe in equity, this is very unequitable. So in other words, we're allowing certain schools to take public dollars and educate a certain portion of our population, whereas a public school has to, educate, again, those with higher need. And so for me, I think that we really need to do this. Over, and I support it. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Gaston. And then Mark.
One quick comment, and then I've got a quick question for Dave. Speaking of equity, the school that I believe Jim has been referring to is Burton. our district, along with a number of other districts in our SU, received a letter from Burton recently saying that they were unable to hire a instructor for driver's ed. And they were therefore, instead of going out and providing it on their own, some other method, they were asking all the public schools to chip in. I don't remember, I think it might've been $700, $800 that would be taking driver's ed. We're in a public school, that's part of what you're already getting. But more importantly, Dave Sharp, I'm not sure if I misunderstood you. Were you saying that we should be looking at what rules and regulations need to be applied to the private independent schools, or that we should be looking, if we've got questions, at what rules and regulations should be public schools or all schools?
Go ahead, Dave.
So I was somewhat upset the way Jim was twisted the intent of my words around. Perhaps that's because I was not very clear. And that is, after we get everybody on a level playing field, if there are good conversations to have about what regulations should be modified that would affect everybody, I think that's a good conversation to have. What the independent schools position has been is, until you fix your public school issues, we don't want to have any conversation about whether we have to be included in those rules. And to me, that's just not acceptable. These rules about public education need to apply to all the schools where we send Vermont tax dollars. Is that clear enough, Mark?
All right, gang.
Yes,
So I know
thank you, Dave.
this has been a little bit of a tough issue for discussion, but I do want to see, we've got a motion on the floor that this board is recommending a pass for this resolution. And so if we're sort of done with the discussion phase of this, I do want to call the question on it. So with your Zoom hands, please, all those that are in favor of this motion that the VSBA board recommend a pass for this resolution, please raise your hand. I'm counting 10.
Yes, 10.
Okay, so if you folks could all lower your hands. And then I'll do all opposed. Count 4. Okay, so just make sure that folks understand what we've got here, right? So the resolution will go out to full membership for consideration with a recommendation from this board that it pass. What we did tonight does not mean that this automatically has become a resolution. It still has to go through the membership process, right? So for folks that still have things that they would like to say about this, the annual meeting now becomes the vehicle for those comments. But thank you, board, for the discussion tonight. David, I see you've got your hand up.
I just want to say that hearing everyone's comments, it's a very complicated issue, and most of what people say makes sense to me, but the logics, people are applying different logics and saying that this is the way we should go. And I just want to say that it is very complicated, and I just don't think you're going to solve the problem you're trying to solve with this approach.
Thank you, David. With that, I'm interested for if we want to move on
Yeah,
to the
can
next
you-
resolution.
Yeah, Thank you, David. Let's move to governance standards resolutions. I'm wondering if you guys could move to page 7 in your packet, I think is where it is, on bold, and we can share the screen again, but the VSBA advocates that the rules and regulations, policies, quality standards, reporting requirements, and laws regarding, oops, sorry, I must have wiped. Sorry, I'm on the wrong page 8. Yeah, there it is. And the recommendation of the board was to pass as a regular resolution. Are there, can we have a motion?
I'll move the.
Yeah.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Mark. Can I have a second, and then we'll discuss? Don? Thank you, Don. So you guys have all received a letter from Neil. You guys have all been following what is going on already with the standards. So I'm wondering, instead of considering the time that we're on right now, if there's any questions or discussion on this particular resolution, or if we all agree that this aligns with our mission and vision. Dave Sharpie.
Thank you. So this is very appropriate, given the resolution we just had a discussion about a minute ago. And I think we should welcome private schools to be, and independent schools to be, part of this discussion. You know, they should apply to all schools, and they should be part of helping to develop what those standards are.
Thank you, Dave. Kim, I see your hand up.
I was just going to say, this is an interesting construct. I'm glad the VSBA is taking the lead on this, just in my State Board of Ed hat, because AOE is crafting regulation regarding district quality standards, which will fall, I think, outside of ed quality standards that the State Board of Ed is updating. And generally, the AOE doesn't craft regulation, but they are in this case. So I'm really grateful that the VSBA is taking the leadership on crafting this, but the engagement process will also include the opportunity, of course, for independent schools to weigh in on what comes out of that process. Eventually this will go through LCAR and ICAR and LCAR. I should know which order of events that is. Dave's shaking his head, I feel better. So there will be ample opportunity for people to interact with it, but I'm really grateful that the VSBA is taking the first stab at it. And then I think the engagement plan from there will be, I think the State Board gets to hear what the AOE has in mind, and then that will be a process that's public as well. Just FYI.
Thank you, Kim. I don't see any other hands up. So we have a motion by Mark, second by Don on the table, and you see the language on page 8 that was shared on the screen. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your electronic hand, please. Okay, I think we have 1, 2, 3, 15. Okay.
13, yes.
13. Let's count it. Okay, so moving right along, we just have one more.
And those opposed?
Yeah, and those opposed, sorry, Dave. Any opposed? Please lower your hands first. Don, are you opposed, or you're just having lower your hand? Okay.
I don't see any hands
Yes.
for opposed.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, we have 0 opposed. So moving to the next one is the VSBA supports universal school meals in Vermont schools. The funding should come from a source other than the education fund. This was actually a motion that we had in one of our meetings. So we took that motion and the recommendation of the committee is to pass as a regular resolution.
Or it's Mark, I'll move this one also.
Thank you, Mark. I
Second.
have a second. Adrian, was that you? Yeah. All right. And now we can unshare the screen. I can see everybody. Great, thank you. All right, any discussion? Okay, all of those in favor, please signify by raising your electronic hand. Okay. I see 12. Sue, how many do you see?
I see 11. Is there some, oh, now I see 12.
I see
Yep,
12, yeah.
12.
Yeah, there was one. Okay. We have 12 yeses. Any opposed? Please lower your hands first. Others, I'm trying to lower mine. Okay. I see 3. Right, Don, do you mean to have your hand up?
No.
Yeah, okay. So 3.
2, 2, 3. Okay.
Oh,
I think
Don brought it
Don-
down.
yeah.
Don brought it down. Okay, so 2.
I was trying to lower it, but my cursor would not, when I clicked on lower, it would not lower it.
Okay, but you did it.
It's, o-
Now you
it's
did it.
okay,
You
guys.
did it.
I can lower all the hands, just so you know.
Okay, oh, good. Okay, well, that concludes the work of the resolutions committee. It was a little clunky tonight, sorry, guys. I'm working my new iPad. Neil, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Flor. Thank you, board. It's hard work, but this is the important work. I mean, the resolutions really are the things that that primarily guide the organization. So I appreciate the effort spent out, even the extra effort to make sure that you know, we all understood the different points of view on these things. It was important to do that going forward. Maybe almost important, well, not quite, are the bylaws of the organization. And we're going to look at the proposed changes for those as well. And so I will share the document and just walk through this with folks. I'll do it article by article, and I'll pause just in case folks have any questions on each of these. You'll see our little nomenclature up here for what's been added and what's been deleted. And for starters, we're going to go right with Article 2, which is our vision, mission, and goals. So the good news is the work that we did earlier tonight to approve the mission and vision, the new mission and vision for the organization, those will get dropped into the 2 places that you see here. So add new vision and add new mission. In the goals area, we are suggesting that we actually remove this from the bylaws, but add a directive here that the board of directors will annually review and revise to the established goals as deemed necessary. We just wanted to do this to add some a little bit of flexibility to the organization. The bylaws are a bit more static in nature. So we thought it made more sense to actually remove the goals, not for the small reason though, actually, that we haven't sort of fully fleshed those out yet based on the new mission and vision. So this gives us the ability to do that in an ancillary document while still directing that the board of directors needs to do this work annually. Any questions on that proposed change?
Neil, Kim,
Yep, go ahead.
just I'm wondering if in that they were specific and like sort of anchored in stone in this document before, and now I like that it is able to be more dynamic with the situations that are priority for the organization in any year. I'm just wondering, should we say it'll be included in the annual report to, not for the full membership to vote on, but that it'll show up somewhere? There'll be, so that somewhere people could look and see what the goals are for the year or the coming year.
I think the plan, Neil, was to have them on the website. They could also go in the annual report.
Yeah, and I don't know if it being in the annual report makes it, we aren't saying anything in this replacement statement about when annually it'll happen or where they would be found. And I don't know if that's important for folks or if it's fine to leave it like that, just knowing that there is an intention about it.
Mhm.
It's more of a question than really.
Yep. I mean, what I could say is if folks thought that it was important, we could just tack a few words onto the end of this as deemed necessary and made available to membership. Let me ask the converse, would anybody be opposed to adding that language in this section? All right, Sue, can we make that modification? And board, what I'm going to look to do is if we handle sort of questions as we go through this at the very end, I'm just going to look to see if you guys would approve these suggested changes as presented. So if you've got certainly some questions on these individually as we go through, raise them now so that we can address it, so that when we get to the end, we can hopefully approve it as just one item.
Neil, the only thing I might say is maybe it's a second sentence because it was clunky a little bit, whatever you guys think with the wordsmithing, but maybe the second sentence is annual goals will be available from, to the membership through the website or however.
Yep. I will say, so
Accessible or
if
something.
folks are generally comfortable with just some language indicating that we will make sure that those goals are available and shared with membership, the actual wording, I think we can develop later on if folks are agreeable with the sentiment. Okay, I am not hearing opposition. I'm going to move on then to the next change, which you see is in the dues section. And this change here was a rewrite just to add some clarity to the process. We didn't think that the reference to the annual meeting made much sense here, so we added a reference to the budget process and setting a date of March 31st of each year to determine the revenue that was necessary to be raised by dues. We've also added some clarity to the process, that the ED would make the recommendation to the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee will bring the budget proposal to the full VSBA board. Any questions or comments on this? Dave Sharp, go ahead.
So school boards are setting their budgets in December timeframe, November, December timeframe, maybe even into January. Is the date of March 31st make it more difficult? I know these dues are a small part of local budgeting, but why not have it be in concert with the budget process that local boards are going through? So
because so if you look at the timing, I think this March 31st is beneficial for the VSBA for the work that we do internally. And then down here, you'll see that the dues notices will go out in advance of September 1 with a due date for the dues on September 1.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Any other questions on that change? I think the next item is in Article 7, Board of Directors. We've added an update here to allow for calling a special meeting. So prior to this change, we just didn't have a provision to call a full meeting of the board together on short notice. So we've added this new language that gives us that option now. Dave, is your hand up from before, or is this a new question? Mark Schauber, go ahead.
Just a quick suggestion. The line that says the board shall meet 5 to 6 times annually. How about just taking that whole line out and saying the board shall meet at least 5 times annually, just to simplify it.
Yep, so sorry, your comment is not related to this special meeting change.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, so down here, we could certainly entertain that. The change that you see here is the old language had a hyphen there, and the new language just replaces the hyphen with a 2. But if you're suggesting, sorry, your language was what?
Just simply the board shall meet at least 5 times annually or 6 times annually, 5 or 6. But just simplify it. I don't think it needs all the additional in there.
Okay. Would folks be opposed to changing the board shall meet at least 5 times annually? Okay. Not sure if you can hear it, gang. I think there's a mariachi band outside. I'm going to move on then to the board shall have the power.
So
Oh,
Neil, can I ask for
You-
clarification?
yes, please.
So was there agreement to just, for the language to read, the board shall meet at least 5 times annually? And that would be the end of the sentence?
No, I think that I would still want this part included. It's just changing from 5 to 6 times to at least 5 times.
Okay, so it would read, the board shall meet at least 5 times annually, including in a planning retreat or as needed to fulfill its duties.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Kim Gleason, go ahead.
I'm just clarifying if the 5 times means at least 4 meetings plus a potential planning retreat or 5 meetings themselves. So is that planning retreat included in the number that we're saying?
That's how I interpret the language.
Okay. And so I'm just wondering, is there ever an occasion that we're actually only meeting 5 times? I can't think of it in my tenure.
Not
but-
in, so our practice has been to meet way more frequently than what our bylaws require.
Okay.
This, in my mind, sets the minimum threshold of which we have not been sort of skewing towards in recent history.
Yeah. So I guess at least 5 is safe. I'm just thinking in reality, I'm not sure it would be our best practice to meet fewer than 6 times during the year, especially if one of those might be including the retreat. So I'm fine either way. I like cleaning it up with at least. I was just wondering if maybe it should be 6, if it is inclusive of the planning retreat.
The retreat has a business meeting in it, so I'm assuming it's a meeting.
Yeah, I think so too. I just don't want us to
Okay,
look like,
so
anyway, whatever.
I am
Doesn't
not
matter.
opposed to changing 5 to 6. I think it has no material difference in how we've been operating currently.
Yeah.
And if folks are fine with that, I think it's a reasonable change.
It sounds more reflective of our practice, at least 6 times. And it seems a little bit more like people are going to say, for our dues, you guys aren't meeting. No, I'm kidding. But I think we are doing more work than that. And you know, I can't imagine a scenario where we're at risk of saying 6 and not doing that many.
Yep. Okay. Then this next change in this very same section is just to bring things now into alignment with the changes that we made to Article 2 above in reference to the new mission and vision. Any questions there? Okay, and then I think it's Article 11. Yes, so Article 11. Here it was just clarifying that the terms for regional reps should be staggered terms. This is what we've been doing in practice, but it wasn't specifically articulated in the bylaws. And then there's a strikeout down here as well too. And this was just some clarification, and quite honestly, it's clarification for me. We had need to appoint a new VSBA board member due to a vacancy. And I was unclear as to whether or not that ran until the next regional meeting, or if it ran until the completion of that board member's term. And so I just thought it made sense here. I think in best practice, we just want appointments to be in effect until the next regional meeting.
Is it possible then we end up without the terms being staggered? You end
No,
up
I
with the
think
same-
that at the next regional meeting, you would just run for election to fulfill that unfulfilled portion of the term.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. The next section, Article 13, is on insurance. And this was, I think we've discussed this previously, we don't bond anymore. So this change in the language you see here is to bring current practice, to bring the bylaws into alignment with current practice, and that we do maintain insurance coverage. It's no longer bonding. So that's what this change accomplishes here. Any questions on this one? And that is the extent of the proposed bylaws changes. And so if someone would be willing to make a motion to approve these changes as presented and modified tonight,
Neil?
that would be wonderful. Yes, Don Collins.
Yes, I have a question. Back months ago, I asked the bylaws committee to look at a way to take and address issues rather than the executive committee, I guess, making the decision on the legislative issues, that there be a way of polling or surveying, or at least including the board in some way, either electronically. I don't see any mention of that. So does that mean nothing happened with my request?
No, it doesn't, Don. So the policy committee has actually met on, I want to say 3 or 4 occasions to talk about this. And you will see a recommendation coming forward from the policy committee. It's just that I didn't, as you can see of the hour that we've got right now, I wasn't
That's
able
fine.
to.
I just want to know where it is.
I wasn't
So-
able to squeeze it into the agenda for tonight. You will likely see it in the September board meeting. It's just to give you a little spoiler alert, it's going to be a recommended policy rather than a bylaws change.
Okay, that's
The
fine.
policy committee felt that that would be a little bit more malleable. We'd have the ability to sort of adjust things a little bit more easily if we found that the proposal just needed to have some tweaks to it versus putting it into the bylaws and then not being able to change it for a year.
No, that makes sense to me. Thank you.
Sure.
Neil, I'll move the changes as adjusted.
As presented and amended at this meeting, is there a second to the motion? Second by Floor. Any further discussion?
A question.
Hang on, Don. I'm going to go to Gaston first.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. Real quick, under Article 8, I know this wasn't part of the package, but we have the pronouns his or her, and I thought we would try to get away from that. And I'm wondering if the committee or the board wouldn't mind changing his or her region to their region, just in keeping with some of the language that we're using in our policies. Over.
Yeah. No, thank you, Gaston. I think that's a fine. I do believe that we were intending to do that. I think maybe we just overlooked that one.
Can you repeat that? I was getting a text from Carrie asking me a question and I didn't hear what that
Sure,
said.
Sue. So Article 8, if you look, it's the 1, 2, 3, the fourth line from the bottom of that first paragraph. Do you see it? And of course, the phone's going to ring while I'm, unmuted here.
Gaston, which paragraph are you talking about under Article 8?
Sorry, so it's that first paragraph. There shall be a president. So from the top, after Article 8, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think it's line 7.
So meeting in his or her region.
So we're changing his or her to their, yes.
Thank you.
Can I confirm the motion was Mark Schauber and the second was Floor?
You can.
Just as a reminder, guys, when you make a motion, please say your name because I'm usually looking at the document, not at faces.
Sure. Sorry, Carrie.
Excuse me, there's one more occurrence of his or her within the bylaws.
I might just want to make a recommendation that we suggest that we just do a global change on that. It would cover
Thank you.
anything that we're not catching currently. All right, any other discussion? Don, yes, sorry, go ahead.
Neil, this occurred, I think, prior to your being on the board, but maybe in your early years. We were going through Act 46. People were not getting reelected to school boards. Some of it was because districts were being revised. And we had a discussion about if you are no longer a school board member or your district changed, as I say, this went on for quite a few meetings with I think Gio at the helm. It might have even been Clarence at the helm at times. So what happens now if somebody is not a school board member? Let's say they got elected last fall and then they're not a school board member anymore. They can continue to the next regional election. Is that what we're doing?
You can, unless you're the president.
Okay. So because I did go back, I did decide to finally run. Nobody wanted to run, so things. But I'm just talking with some people as we go forward who may decide that they won't run, but they might be want to be my regional director replacement if I don't run for this. So I was just curious, if you're no longer a director, you finish out that year, and then the region would take and appoint somebody else or elect somebody else?
Yes,
Yes.
that's in policy, yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Sue.
All right, any other discussion? All right, seeing none, then all those in favor of the motion to approve the bylaws changes as presented and amended this evening, please raise your hand. I count 14. Can I count you two, Don? I count 15 with Don. Okay. And then I think that would cover everybody, but anyone opposed? No, I didn't think so, because I thought that was everybody. Okay, thank you. Now, let's go back to our agenda and see where we are. Thanks for sticking with us here, folks. This is a whopper tonight. Task Force on District Governance Standards. And that one, so folks were familiar, right? I had sent an email out to board members letting them know that we were notified by Secretary French that he would like the VSBA to take the lead on development of those governance standards. But he gave us a pretty short timeline for that work. So I met with Sue. We made the decision to sort of proactively get things going here. And reached out for membership for folks to serve on the task force. We got a pretty good response, pretty good, not great. And Sue, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we've now got representatives looking to serve covering all of the regions except for Chittenden East and West at this point.
So yeah, yesterday we sent out a targeted email to Chittenden East and West because we did not get anyone who was interested in serving on the task force from either of those regions. And we gave them, the deadline was yesterday. Originally, we gave an extra day because they had not, there wasn't anyone. And I don't know, Carrie, whether you received any emails today from someone in one or both of those regions.
As of the beginning of this meeting, I was just going to look at my emails right now, but as of the beginning of this meeting, there weren't any. Let me, I'll look right now just to make sure, but Uh,
Also did a targeted re-forward to a few people and I haven't heard back either.
No,
Okay.
I don't have any.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a challenging time of year, especially, as you get to mid to late August, and people are trying to squeeze in vacations before school starts. So I can certainly understand, maybe folks just not being on the receiving end of this. I just put this out. If you guys know, if the SBA board members, if you know folks from those areas that you think would be good or be willing to serve, we'd love to have them, but we're not going to hold up the work of this task force waiting for representatives from those areas. So I really wish that we get somebody from those parts that are willing to participate, but I can't hold up the work of the entire effort just because we don't have representatives from there. Mark Schauber, go ahead.
Yeah, Sue, I spoke to somebody this morning who said they're going to contact you later this week. I didn't realize that today was a deadline. So you should be hearing, I can give you the name later.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then board members, so you will be involved in the process. The recommendations the task force comes up with will come to this body before we go ahead and send them back over to Secretary French. And then that begins then the whole rulemaking process. And so this will go through a whole period of review and revision and everything. So there will be multiple points along the way for folks to have input on these things. But because of the tight timelines, we just wanted to get the ball rolling. So hopefully you will forgive me for any digressions here and how we sort of spun this thing up, but I thought it was important that we move quickly on it. As soon as we finalize the task force members, we will get that information out to board members so that you know who those folks are. Any other questions on that one or anything else, Sue, that you wanted to add?
No, thank you.
All right. Regional meetings update.
So the main purpose we wanted to do an update here is just to make sure everyone understands which of you, there are 2 reps for each region, and one of you needs to run the business meeting of the region, and that's typically the one who's not up for re-election. So I'm just going to go through each region quickly here. In Addison, there is an open seat because Dave Sharp is no longer a school board member, and his seat was actually expiring in 2022. So there's that open seat, and Suzanne Buck is expiring in 2023. Suzanne, you would be running the business meeting. And for anyone running the business meeting, I send you a script that you can use, and you don't have to stick strictly to it, but you have it there for your use. So Dave and Suzanne, if you are able to find someone who would be interested in running for that seat, that would be ideal. In the Bennington region, Jim Salzgiver is up for re-election, so David Chandler would be running the business meeting. And when I say someone's up for re-election, please let us know if you do not plan on running again for the VSBA board, assuming, Jim, that you will plan on running again. Central Vermont, we have Floor up for re-election. And then later in this agenda tonight, coming up soon, we have Bart Bizio hopefully being approved by the board to replace Mark Nielsen, who has resigned. And Bart would be also having to run. He would be running for a 1-year term, and Floor would be running for a 2-year term because Bart would be replacing Mark, who was expiring in 2023. So we need actually someone else to run that meeting because they're both up for re-election. Eastern Chittenden, there is an open seat because Kim Gleason is no longer a school board member. So she will not be running again unless Kim's been elected to a school board without my knowledge.
Nope.
Then we have Colleen expiring in 2023. And so Colleen will run the business meeting. And Colleen and Kim, I hope you can find someone who would want to run for that seat. Franklin, oh, great. Thank you. Franklin Grand Isle, Don Collins' seat is expiring. And so Tara Sweet would run the business meeting. And Don, are you planning to run again?
I think you're muted, Don.
I love it. Go. I'm unmuted. Sue, I have indicated that if someone was interested, I would step down. I don't want to leave it vacant and have to go out and search for somebody. So I've talked to a couple of people, and right now I don't have any yeses. I have some maybes. So if we get close to the date, then I certainly will be a candidate. But right now, if we can find, I'm always looking for a local school board, and I guess I'd say VSBA, somebody with children in school. On our local school board, we've been very fortunate in the last few years to get 3 or 4 new board members who have children in elementary school. Maybe one, and nobody, I guess, from high school. But anyway, I just think that's better than having someone who hasn't had children in school for 40 years. So that's where I'm at. But if no one enthusiastically comes forward, I'll put my name back in.
Okay, we'll stay in touch with you, Don. So next is Kingdom North. And we have Kevin Amiot is his term is expiring, and Gaston is going to be running the business meeting. Is Kevin on tonight? Can't see everyone right now.
I saw him briefly, but I don't see him at the moment.
Okay, we'll find out if Kevin plans to run again. Maybe you can help us with that, Gaston. Kingdom South, Mark Clough, his term is expiring, and the other seat has been open. They haven't been able to find anybody. So that seat has been open. So there'll be 2, hopefully 2 elections in Kingdom South, and we'd like to have 2 representatives from that region. In the Rutland region, Adrian Raymond's term is expiring, so Lisa Miser will be running the business meeting. Assuming you're going to run again, Adrian. West,
Too.
okay, great. West Chittenden, there's an open seat right now because Jeremy Metcalf resigned from the board. And his term would have expired anyway, and at the end of in 2022. So we need to fill that seat, and Martine will run the business meeting. In Wyndham, Mark Schauber's term is expiring, and Dan will run the business meeting. We're assuming, Mark, you're going to run again. And in Windsor, Amy McMullen's term is expiring, so Nancy Russell will run the business meeting. And as I said, we're assuming, unless we hear from you that you're not going to run again, we're basically assuming that you're going to. And I'll be in touch with Don. And the last thing I just wanted to say about the regional meetings was you can find information. It's always in the weekly update email. From now on out, we'll have information about the regional meetings. It's been in there for a couple of weeks. There's also a web page on our website under the events. September 7th is Addison regional meeting. September 8th is Rutland, Bennington, Central Vermont, and Kingdom North. September 29th is Kingdom South, Wyndham, and Windsor. And October 6th is Eastern Chittenden, Western Chittenden, and Franklin Grand Isle. And they're all going to be through Zoom.
Awesome. Thank you, Sue. Any questions for Sue on the regional meetings, gang? All right, seeing none, we're going to move right along then to process to appoint employer commissioner. So as folks may recall, if you heard the bad news that Laura Soares has decided that 1 was enough. So she's served her her 1-year term on the employer commissioners. We are very grateful for the work that she did for us in that area, but she's stepping aside. This board, this body is the one that has the authority to appoint new commissioners. And just a brief discussion here, I want to check with the board. We have, as of the last time that we did this, 2 alternates, right? 2 alternates that were provided to us through some legislation that passed a couple of years back. Those alternates are Mark Koenig and Kim Farnham. They serve as the alternates on the employer commissioners and were involved in the bargaining during this last round. I have spoken to both of them. My suggestion is that we move up one of the alternates to fill this position that is vacated by Laura's absence, and then we later then go in and appoint a new alternate to the employer commissioners. But the decision is up to this body. That's merely just my recommendation. But I'm checking to see if folks might be comfortable with that idea. I've spoken, like I said, both with Mark and Kim. They're both are willing to move up into that position. Neither one of them sounded like they would be upset though if they didn't move into that slot. So I think we don't have too much to worry about as to which one we pick for this. But questions, Mark, go ahead.
Is there any sort of stipend for this position?
There's not an individual stipend, is there, Sue?
No, in the years when they are actively negotiating, they get the state rate, which I think is like $55 for a day or something along those lines. The last time negotiations happened, the legislature appropriated that money, so it was there to pay them for that.
We may want to consider some sort of stipend. This is a really important job. So
VSBA has given them like an equivalent stipend, even when the legislature doesn't do that. We have done that. We have given them an equivalent stipend through the VSBA service agreement.
So,
but
Neil,
it's not much of a, it's not much money for the work that they do.
So hang on one second, Don, because I had a couple of other hands up. Mark, was that the only question that you had? No.
Yeah, I think it's something we should consider though.
Yep. Suzanne, go ahead.
I was just gonna move that we move Kim Farnham up to into Laura Soares' position and then find another alternate.
Okay, so we have a motion. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Don. Seconded by Don Collins, Carrie, I saw. So motion by Suzanne, seconded by Don. Any discussion of the motion to move Kim Farnham from alternates to employer commissioner? All right. Seeing no further discussion, then all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hands. That is unanimous. Thank you, board. I will pass along the the good news or the condolences to Kim, I guess, depending on how you look at it, really. All right, next up, we are going to move on to the appointment of a regional. Sorry, Don, go ahead.
Since you said either one, I mean, maybe you already know that Kim will accept it, but if she doesn't, I just want to make sure we're comfortable choosing the other person. I thought your suggestion in the beginning was excellent, that we move one of those people up, and that was what I was going to say before the motion, but I would hate if we go with that name and it fails, I don't think we should have to come back.
I've spoken to both candidates and I am reassured that Kim will accept.
Okay.
Kim Gleason, you had a question, or you still got your hand up from before? All right. Okay, gang, so we're going to move on to appointment of a regional representative for the Central Vermont region to replace Mark Nielsen, and I am very happy to welcome Bart to our meeting this evening. Bart, I am so sorry. This is, you caught us just on an off night, man. We had a lot to talk about. We went a little bit longer than we normally do. I don't want to shy you off from this excellent opportunity. We're normally done like right on time. But if you wouldn't mind, can you just give us a little bit of background, who you are, where you're from?
Sure. Yeah.
Why you're interested.
Yep. So Bart Bazzaio, I live in Waterville, Vermont. Father of 3 children, two just graduated from high school and are headed off to college. One is headed into high school. I'm in my second term, just starting my second term at the Lamoille North Modified Unified Union School District, and just have a general passion for governance, driving better outcomes and equity and quality in our schools, and I'm a fan of the work that Vermont School Boards Association has done. Mark, I had spoken with Mark previously. He thought it would be a great experience for me, and look forward to serving on the board.
Thank you. Board members, any questions for Bart before we enthusiastically vote him in? Don Collins, go ahead. I see your hands up.
Bart, during the past 50 years, I've had occasional and frequent interactions with a fellow named David Whitcomb. What would he tell me about you?
Well, David would say that I'm a very active member on our school board, and that I've shared my perspectives with the school board, and hopefully served it well over the past. I mean, it's only been 3 years, but it's been a rather challenging 3 years. It seems like an eternity. So,
is it your intent to serve as long as David has?
I don't know about that, but yeah, that would be quite an honor if I could.
No, thank you. I'm kind of tongue in cheek because David and I have been friends and enemies over the last 50 years on education issues.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you. Any other questions for Bart this evening? And Bart, just remind me again, last name is Bazio?
It's Bazio.
Bazio. All right. Gang, I gave you a little out there, right? So now you've got the right pronunciation if you want to make a motion for Bart.
I want to make that motion.
Oh, but you got to say the name, Don. You got to say the name.
Bazio. Bazio. I got it the third time.
You got it.
All right.
I'll second.
I would like to second. Oh, Mark beat me.
Okay.
It's okay.
Carrie,
Flo, you can have it.
Welcome, Bart.
Carrie, for your note taking, Carrie, the motion was made by Don, seconded by Mark Schauber.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion to appoint Bart to this seat on the VSBA board, please raise your hand. And that is indeed unanimous. Bart, you won handily. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully, I think you'll find this a great group of folks. Some pretty interesting topics. One of which we're going to move into right now, which is the fourth quarter financial report.
Okay, in the interest of time, we'll try to keep it relatively quick. Basically, not dramatic changes since from the third quarter. We do have the June 30, 22, our fiscal year end numbers in, but not final yet. So in your package, you've got a comparative balance sheet for June 30, 22 and income statement for the year end of June 30th. But you'll see some highlighted spots that are yet to be settled. The auditors are working on it, and you'll be seeing audited financials in the not too distant future. But where we came out is ahead of budget for the year. There are some specific items, including like changes in our personnel that led to our performance being slightly better than expected. A few other sort of pandemic related items, but finished the year pretty well. Our financial resources are in good shape. So there's I could get into more detail, but I'm not sure anybody really wants a lot more detail. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Jim this evening on the financial report? I consider that an endorsement of the excellent job that you're doing on the finance committee, sir. Thank you. Carrie, if you wouldn't mind, I do want to turn off the recording for the next portion of the meeting.
Okay, just 1 sec.
Thank you, Carrie. So at this moment, then, for folks that are unfamiliar, we typically should say typically, by our bylaws, we elect the president at the August meeting to begin serving a term right after the annual meeting. And so it is the August meeting. This body is in need of electing a president for the upcoming year. So at this point, I guess I will open the floor for nominations.
Neil, oops.
Cass, I know that's okay. I saw David Chandler had his hand up first, and if I'm going to be nice, I'm going with Zoom is the one that helps me organize things. David Chandler, go ahead.
I'm going to steal Gaston's thunder. I would like to nominate Neil Odell to continue as president of the VSBA.
Thank you. I will blush slightly, but also ask if there are any other nominations.
Did you need a second?
Not for a nomination.
Okay.
Okay, gang, well, you're making this, I guess, easy or hard. I'm not sure which. No other nominations. There is one on the floor for Neil Odell. All those in favor of Neil Odell as president, then please raise. It's probably inappropriate for me to be calling the motion on my own name, but
You're forgiven.
all right. That looks to be unanimous. I thought it was going to take a little bit longer. I see that Phil is not quite back with us. Do we want to take a look at the strategic plan monitoring report then, Sue?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. So there's quite a bit in the strategic plan monitoring report. A couple of the things that I wanted to highlight are the number of board development workshops that Phil is doing with boards is astronomical. It's definitely he's been very, very busy. And I mean, he has put a lot of miles in. And I think he's found the work to be really gratifying. He's really enjoying working with Vermont school boards. So that is very exciting. And some of the work he's doing is more long-term as well, like strategic planning type of work. Another thing that I wanted to highlight was the governance standards task force, which we already discussed. And let's see what else. I guess one other thing would be the policy work that Sandra's doing. She is continuing to do updates of the policies, and we're meeting very regularly with the VSBA attorneys in order to get that done. And we're also very hard at work planning the conference. So we're really excited about the annual conference this year because it's going to be our first in-person conference since 2019. And the theme of the conference is how are the students doing? And we have a really excellent keynote speaker, Kay Douglas, who's nationally recognized for her work in educational equity, mindfulness, and board dynamics. And we also have a lot of great programming for workshops on things like what to do with student data, setting goals and monitoring progress, the school board's role in district climate and culture, and superintendent oversight and student voice. So we very much hope to see all of you at the annual conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Any questions on monitoring report? Mark Schauber, go ahead.
I just want to thank you for the Robert's Rules webinar. Ask you to do that every year, and also to put on a Robert's Rules for small boards one. I'm getting a lot of questions down here about it, what's required, what's not required, what parts they can do without, if they want to pick from Robert's Rules and some from small boards, things like that. So I think that there are probably a lot of boards that would be interested in actually understanding what those rules mean.
Yes, I think we did hear that loud and clear in the questions, that there were quite a few questions about small boards. So that's something that we could provide some supplementary information on and possibly even another webinar on. We actually had a problem with Zoom that day and the webinar did not get recorded. So we're going to do it again later this month. And we'll put a notice out about that. So the recording will go up a little bit later than it normally would because we had an issue with Zoom not recording and also not sending we don't think it sent the survey because we didn't get any responses to the survey, which we always do a survey afterwards. So, but it was quite a lively webinar. There were over 62 questions asked. And I would say like in a normal webinar, we might have 8 or 10 questions. So
And we had 140 people register. It's a huge.
Nice. Thank you for the work that you and the staff are doing in all areas of the VSBA. I know I've seen like a broken record when I say this, but for folks that are unfamiliar, like the amount of work that this organization does with the number of employees that it has is extraordinary. And I really want to thank all of you guys for everything. It's greatly appreciated.
Neil,
Yes, Don, go ahead.
I have quite often Wednesday nights, I have a 7:30 meeting. So I'm going to leave now, even though I'm going to be late. That was important I stay as long as I could. I wanted to make sure you would be reelected. I knew it might be close, but I'm going to beg off and go to my meeting 30 minutes late.
All right. Thank you so much, Don. Appreciate it. With that, I think so. We're going to hold out one more little bit to see if Phil is able to join us. We have the consent agenda, which includes the June minutes. Folks, take a look at those minutes. Just make sure there's nothing in there that needs to be updated, corrected, amended, and then I will look for a motion. Nancy, go ahead.
Yes, I have one correction.
Yep.
Even though down in the body of the minutes, it says that I did make a second, it doesn't have me in the attendees, and I truly was there.
So Carrie, if we're just able to add Nancy Russell as an attendee for the June meeting. Any other corrections for the minutes?
I'll take care of it.
Thank you. Any other corrections for the minutes? All right, seeing none, then I'll look for a motion to approve the minutes as corrected.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Nancy. Seconded by Kim Gleason. So motion by Nancy Russell, second by Kim Gleason. Carrie, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Oops.
That looks to be unanimous. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. Tara, are you abstaining? Oh, no, Tara's in. We are indeed unanimous on that, Carrie. All right. So Carrie, I know you're a busy person tonight. If you wouldn't mind, we're going to do the stop on the recording one more time. Okay, we are back with one item left on the agenda, which is new business. Do any board members have any new business that they would like to bring up? I didn't think so, not at this late hour. Oh, Dave Sharp, go ahead.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second to that motion?
Yes.
All right. All those in favor of the motion, just leave the Zoom meeting. I am sorry, folks, but thanks for sticking with us. This was a marathon.
Thanks,
one tonight.
everybody.
I appreciate it.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Thank you, Neil and Sue.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.